Hi there, this is David Hayden Jones, otherwise known as Mr. Ketch on Supernatural, and you are listening to Kneel Before Pod.
Kneel Before Blog presents Kneel Before Pod.
We pray at night for the helpless, hoping you get us through breakfast, wishing somebody come save us. Black lightning's back, come to shock the haters.
Hello and welcome to the first edition of Kneel Before Pod, actually recorded in 2018. I'm your host Craig, and I'd like to wish all listeners a Happy New Year on behalf of all of us here. Beginning our year of podcasts is familiar territory for us, superheroes. Specifically, we bring you our patented extensive coverage of the first episode of the new DC TV show, Black Lightning, titled The Resurrection. Joining me for the first official recording of the year is Chris.
Hello!
Happy New Year!
Happy New Year!
For the first time today, honestly.
For definitely the first time today.
And Aaron. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
For also the third time today. Listeners, we had some audio issues prior to this, so we've recorded this intro about 4 times. It's happening. So,
and this was the best intro we could come up with.
This was the best one we had. Yeah. Wow. Bodes well. Anyway, eagle-eyed listeners will know this is not the first podcast of the year. It's the first recording of the year because we finally managed to dig the time travel podcast out of the space-time rut it was in and get it online. So, if you haven't listened to that, please do, because you'll find out why Aaron hates fun.
Hate it.
He hates it. And some other stuff that we kept bringing up without actually having a podcast to reference. So, out of time. It's great. So, an advert for our first upload of the year rather than our first recording of the year. But this is our first recording of the year, so welcome back, guys. We're ready to talk some stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, the DC TV machine continues to forge on with a new CW show called Black Lightning, which is kind of in the Arrowverse, but not really. It's not in the Arrowverse at all, but we'll get to that. So, Chris, what did you think of Black Lightning's first episode? Without spoilers, as usual.
Without spoilers, I wasn't too sure what to expect. I'd watched the trailer, and I had a rough idea, but I was pleasantly surprised by it. I'm not 100% convinced as yet, but I think it'll grow on me.
Cool. Aaron, what did you think?
This will, I think, if it carries on as it is, become probably the only DC show that I will be continuing watching.
Wow, you just sack and Flash then completely?
I think so. After the Thinker nonsense that I've just watched, I gave it the start of the 4th season. It's 4th season, I think, that I said I would, and it didn't grab me, so I'm out.
Oh, fair enough. So, but this show you liked?
Well,
so far.
I think I can properly explain now this commentary on me disliking fun, actually, because of this show. There's a very contemporary plot line that runs through the foundation of Black Lightning's, as certainly the first episode. I assume it'll have to carry on, and it gives it a real purpose, a sort of a real meaning when you're watching it now, and I am just attracted to that. And I think that the other DC shows, because they're heading in a different angle, they're trying to be entertaining and trying to be fun, and that's a good thing. There's definitely there's room for that. I couldn't personally challenge that at all, but I like to see that meaning, that purpose in a plot line that makes it just that little bit more relevant, and Black Lightning is taken that angle.
Cool. I really liked it. I think it was different enough to what we've seen before with the other shows, although not so different that it's alienating, because it's easy to just kind of go in a completely off-kilter direction, but if it doesn't, it just might not land with audiences, and I think that's part of the problem I had with kind of the Netflix shows. Some of them were just a bit, well, other than being poorly paced and dull to watch, I think the direction they took things in didn't work for me, so I won't go into too much detail about that because that's another podcast. But I think Black Lightning kind of gives me enough familiarity without, without sticking to a rigid formula as much as it could. So I was well on board with it. Like the characters, I like the setup. I just like it, and I'm looking forward to seeing more. I'm really excited to see what will happen with these characters and this status quo in the future. So that's as much as I can say without spoiling. We're ready to head into some kind of spoiler section thing.
Verse, thing, place, space, time.
It'll be some kind of lightning strike or electricity sound effect. Aaron, have you got anything spoiler-free to say before we go and spoil it for everyone?
I think that it's difficult to comment on this from an outsider's perspective, but it's a big deal that this is a black superhero set in clearly a black America, and definitely, as I say, a modern America. And it's such a prominent part of what we've done. And think we could comment on that without going into spoiler street territory place.
Yeah, we could. Part of the entire DNA of the show is the fact that obviously the lead character's black. Almost all of the cast are black. And it's certainly built around the kind of mistreatment of African Americans in American society in certain places. It's unclear where the city is supposed to be, but you could probably make some comparisons based on what you've heard in the news or whatever else. I mean, there's people that are of greater authority to talk on that kind of stuff than I am, but I'm able to just see what's happening on screen and react to it. So, even though it's not something I can necessarily relate to as such, I think it's something that anybody could watch and get something out of.
Well, I think the only reason I said that it's difficult to talk on, I just mean from an internal perspective. Clearly, you can't say, this speaks to me on any personal or historical level, because having not grown up in Black America, obviously I'm not going to be able to do that. But still, it seems that, as you say, they've picked that very important plot line that is especially police mistreatment of Black Americans. It's very prominent in today's news, and there's a difference between the American and the British news, which again adds that distance to it for us as three white Brits, but we still have that form of institutional problem over here. It manifests very differently over here, I think, because we don't have the same gun laws at all, so you don't really see the same foreground, for want of a better word, plots in our news, but you know that it's still there because it keeps getting mentioned every, regular news broadcast, so we know that there's this ongoing problem. And that's one of the most interesting things for me, just because it has chosen to take an everyday problem that we are facing now, and I don't know how much it plans to tackle that and how much it plans to just have it in the background. Either way, it's important because somebody is doing it and bringing it to the attention, and it stops anybody, especially people that might have that distance like us, forgetting that this is still an important issue of the day. So I'm happy to see the program just because it gives me this window that I'm not getting from a lot of other parts of the science fiction or superhero genre. That this is what I like to see. I would like to see science fiction standing up more and saying, "This is what's going on. We need to get involved." And Electric Dreams almost did that with a couple of its episodes that we've just seen here on British TV. But it's still a rare thing. So I welcome seeing it anywhere we can, any contemporary issue put into a plot line.
Yeah, and I think there's I think there's a lot to unpack from that and the way they handle it. Plus, it's not unheard of in, media anyway. The film Detroit that came out, I think it was last year. That's very much about police brutality in neighbourhoods that are predominantly populated by black people and things like that. So it's out there, people know about it, and therefore there's enough of a grounding for people to kind of latch onto it, even if it doesn't speak directly to them. And it's the next step of the CW's effort to diversify the casts in their other superhero shows. The other four may have kind of white leads, but they do have in the background a more diverse cast, and their guest stars are pretty diverse, and they're not frightened to change races of comic book characters. They just bring them in, and no one really bothers about it. So this is the next step. Let's have a lead character who isn't the kind of standard template that people might be used to seeing, and that's something.
I think it's interesting to see this show as well. Like, I was watching Luke Cage, and so far I haven't seen this in one episode of Black Lightning, but there were parts of Luke Cage where this show is black. It's very black. There's lots of black things in it, and it's all black, and they really push that angle, especially with the radio interview. You couldn't miss it. Whereas at the moment, I think I like the Black Lightning setup as in, this is modern day America. And it seems a bit more subtle,
It's not as stylized, is it?
No, it feels like you're watching some other drama that you could have equally as watched anywhere on American TV, which is so that subtlety gives it this very grounded presence that you think, these are believable everyday people with their everyday problems, and that I very much welcomed. It does actually make you wonder, though, I think, when these shows are showing you Black America, and then Luke Cage definitely showed Black America, and then in the other shows we're seeing White America, as you say, the Flash and Arrow. They've put their extra cast in, but they're all supporting.
Yeah.
They've gone down the supporting characters being lesbian or gay, but still they're supporting characters, and there's only a few here and there. So they're bringing these things in, but none of these things are forefront. But I wonder if the next step is going to be moving on to what would be a truly gender-neutral, race-neutral show. It makes you wonder where this is going to go, and you think, actually, I wonder if can we write that? Can we not write that now? Is this inaccessible at the moment? Are we having to take these steps towards this ultimate goal, or could we jump straight to it? I don't think there's an answer to that. It does feel like it's very much an open question, though, for the whole of TV land.
Yeah, it's kind of like in Doctor Who, how they could have cast a white. A black male actor in the lead role instead of a white male actor in the lead role, but they just skipped straight to gender flipping, just went right for that, and I wonder if they're just gradually pushing the envelope to see what they can get away with. So, I think it was the Flash that first introduced openly gay characters as just casual references, someone talking about their husband or whatever else, and then that kind of bled into the other shows, and so it's kind of. And then colourblind casting when it comes to certain characters. I think it's maybe we'll do this and we'll see what happens. And then obviously they do it with side characters or supporting characters or kind of recurring characters at first, just to maybe that test the water a little bit. And then they move on to this, I suppose, which is the next logical step in terms of pushing it to see what it can get away with, and will people watch the show, will people engage with the show, and judging by the early reactions, it seems like it's worked.
This is going to be different to the other ones, though, isn't it? Because the other shows are taking something that exists and trying to bend it to fit.
Yeah.
Whereas now we're taking a character that was always Black American right from the start. So it feels like this shouldn't be testing the water, because nobody realistically would be offended by a character being what they already were. So this shouldn't be an acceptance issue.
I just meant in terms of the focus, so we'll have this lead and we'll have this show built around this entire premise, and so that's more what I mean, rather than in terms of pushing it, rather than they're not doing anything new or different here as such, but they're doing something that's kind of, it's not really been done much before, if at all, in a kind of weekly TV, certainly weekly network TV series kind of format. Luke Cage doesn't count because it's a streaming thing. Really?
Yeah, I guess I see what you mean, that it's new. It's certainly new, but it's one of those things that, well, the response should be, it's about time, rather than, I wonder if people will accept this. You can imagine that the people are saying that, the sort of people you don't want to speak to anyway.
It's new for this genre, I would say, because there's been other dramas out, there's been other recurring series which have had black leads and have had that focus, but this is the first we've seen with that. I'm going to use something that probably doesn't fit, but this hyper realistic value to it, where the other CW shows are set in not a cartoonish universe, but along those lines. I think Arrow, when it started, was closer to realism, but it's kind of drifted off along with the other shows, into this world of magic and superheroes and everything, but the background world seems equally as fake now to the rest, because you go, well, society wouldn't react that way, people wouldn't react that way, whereas this program seems to have taken that and gone, you know what, people would react this way to superheroes being about, or to a black vigilante being in town, or a street gang being about. So they seem to have gone for a different angle. Definitely a darker theme to it as well. I mean, some scenes we'll talk about once we go into the spoiler section, I suppose, that show harsh truths of things that are actually going on in the streets. And if that doesn't make people go, oh, well, that's terrible seeing that in drama, surely that doesn't happen in the real world. It does. That's why it's there. So I do think they're doing a great job of showing that, and it'll be interesting to see how that continues on. They've done a very, very strong start, but I'm interested to see if it's going to be, we'll focus on an issue a week, which you hope they don't. You hope they just they carry on the way they have and just drip feed it and do it properly.
Yeah,
certainly I think that's the biggest thing that marks this out from the others shows, actually. I was talking with Craig earlier about this, actually, that I didn't think that this show would be able to easily do a crossover with the other shows, because the tone is so different. This tone is like the Marvel Netflix shows, in that it doesn't derive its humour from the Buffy the Vampire Slayer roots that most of in fact all of the other DC shows do. It does have that more, as you say, fixed in real problem setting. It would be weird if Black Lightning turned up in the other universes, because he would have to look around and go, the physics of this universe is different. These guys have a Proton, an Electron, and a Funnytron, because there's that humour that's just fed into the whole
Funnytron.
But it's there. It's there in their very universe. Everything is built around the quip, the gag. It is definitely there in their metaphysics. Their characters are almost required, to make a joke at a certain point. Absolutely. So he would suddenly feel like these people were aliens looking around. And one of the other characters, Cisco drops into what is effectively the real world. He'd be horrified. It's so grim and nasty here, and he'd make a quip and everybody would stare at him, and it just wouldn't, it would be really difficult for them to blend these. But that makes it a good choice, I think, from DC, because it means that they're going for both markets. Like, Craig, like you said earlier to me, that Marvel have gone for the funny verse with S.H.I.E.L.D., and then they've gone with the serious verse for their Defenders show. So they've already tried to corner both. This is DC trying to corner both. It just gives you that variety. It means they can capture a bigger audience, which is got to be a good thing for them.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because, the Earth 1 set shows, which is Arrow and Flash, and Legends of Tomorrow, but that's all over the place time-wise. They kind of live in a universe of tolerance, don't they? Where these race issues never crop up, really. Supergirl, it does, occasionally, but that's more related to aliens, but you do have the internal... the humans hating other humans aspect for various reasons. So they did a really good bit about Mexicans in the US and what people have called them in the past. Like some commander in chief we could name perhaps. So they talk about that, but I think in certainly the Flash and Arrow, they'll every mixed race gets on together. No one mentions anything. No one bats an eyelid when people are in open same-sex relationships, etc. Whereas this is a world where that doesn't necessarily happen, and that's interesting. So Cisco turning up in this universe would be like, what the hell? What's going on?
It's just closer to real life with added superheroes, I think, than the other universe is. It would clash a bit too much, I think. And like you say, the issues do exist in the other universe, but they're kind of glossed over in the background.
Yeah.
They are not up front and centre, and it's never harsh truth. Like you say, they will do it as aliens rather than focus on it being a race issue. It's a human v alien issue. It's
except in one instance, but yeah. Except there have been odd bits, but like I say, it's always been very background and then pushed on again. Yeah.
So I think without going into the spoiler bit, I think they've done a good job of setting up this world. It's brutal to watch in some of the scenes because it is honest in what it does. It doesn't do what the other shows do, which is try and sort of gloss over it a bit. It doesn't have the humour angle to the extent that the other shows do, if at all, really. So yeah, I'm interested to see if they stick with their convictions with this and they don't try and twist it and bend it a bit to try and fit with the other stuff. I think if they're going to go their way with this particular universe and maybe bring other characters into it, or bring, as in other shows, into this verse, they would need to completely restart them because they just wouldn't work bringing the existing characters over.
Well, I think the multiverse thing is the way you do it, if you do it at all. Which they don't have to. Not everybody has to interact, but the multiverse thing would be the way to do it, because then the purpose of it is to highlight the differences. Although I think we've been encroaching on spoiler territory for a bit, so
yes.
I think we should just flip that switch and get there, because otherwise we might spoil stuff for people. And interestingly, if any listeners are the people that listen to us for like 5 minutes until we decide to start spoiling it and then go away, and maybe come back, we'd like to hear from you. We want to know if our efforts are appreciated. So just a thought. Interact with us. We like people to talk. So ready for spoilers then?
Go for it.
Cool. Aaron, you ready for spoilers?
Aye.
What
Right.
an impressive lightning rod you have.
Well, thank you. Let's not go there. But
Yeah.
okay, so now we can fully talk about spoilers. So we've kind of touched on this a little bit. I don't think there's much more we can say about it being another Arrowverse show, but not in the same universe, because what more can we say other than, this is tonally different. They've made the right decision in trying to let it stand on its own without having to worry about connecting to anything else. So this is something that can just build organically out of itself rather than build from pre-existing stuff, and that's good. I think that's been a good decision. And maybe if it's popular enough, if there's enough demand for it, they'll find some way to do some form of crossover eventually. But get it out the first season first, I would say, before you start thinking about doing stuff like that.
No, I basically what I said before. I think they should let this grow in its own little pocket of the universe, kind of like they've done with Supergirl, but to a greater extent, where they go, listen, this is out on its own, doing its thing, and leave it that way. If they want to create new characters in this universe, but keep it tonally the same, I've got no problem with that. But I'd have a problem with them trying to adjust this to fit the others, or likewise, trying to adjust others to then fit into this.
Yeah.
I could say that if they did want to bring the other characters in, the only way that would interest me is if they took perhaps even the same actors, but gave them a different character. Like, this is the serious version of Barry Allen, this is the serious version of Green Arrow, and people like Cisco would be totally different. But if they had to mix them up because that was what the fans demanded and the money wasn't going to be answered otherwise, I'd want to see that. I'd want to see not a portal open and the people come through, but I'd want to see this world's version of those heroes and see where that went.
Well, I quite like that, actually. That's quite a neat idea.
I still want to see the Oliver Queen that belongs to Supergirl's Earth and so on, especially after the crossover established that there are duplicates everywhere. So, but yeah, that might be cool. What is Oliver Queen like in this universe? What is Barry Allen like in this universe? Are they superheroes? Are they not? Why not?
I think you may get a token something on the telly in the background, or a newspaper headline or something. They have been quite known for doing that, dropping a name in a conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll see how it pans out. I certainly don't think, though, from what the interviews with the producers have been saying, they're not thinking about crossovers yet. They don't really have to think about their big crossover until next year, or the one. Well, it'll be this year actually, but they don't have to think about it for a couple of months yet. Like in terms of starting to build it. So whether they want to build this guy as part of it or not, it's up in the air. It depends what they do. So I'm fine if they do, and I'm fine if they don't at this stage. But I'm always keen to see how people interact, with across all these shows. But that's just the fanboy in me talking, and there's no way of silencing that voice.
I think what I might also throw in at this point is something else that occurred to me whilst I was watching it. This angle that they've taken on more down-to-earth, more contemporary, is the exact angle that I wanted from the DC films. This is what I wanted to see out of Batman vs. Superman, whereby these characters are existing in a slightly grimmer, more realistic world. And I won't promise that the films have done an amazing job. We've discussed that on other podcasts, but I do think that was the direction that somebody was heading in, success or fail. The Black Lightning universe is what I think, well, what I've seen of it so far, is what I think the DC film universe could have been. And I would have loved to have seen the Batman in this world, the Superman in this world, and seeing them struggle to be human against a world that was fighting back against that. And it's a big shame that the films didn't make it. But if this TV series makes it, this will be the thing that I've been looking for, I think, for quite a while.
Yeah. I think that's a valid point. The DC TV guys have always demonstrated an ability to come up with, stuff that resonates with people, and certainly this show is no different. At least, again, based on early reactions. I mean, I've only seen bits and pieces, but certainly all the review sites I look at, including mine, have done it positively. Have been very positive about it. I've said that the CW producers have done it again. They've got another hit on their hands, etc. Of course, this is just the pilot, and we all know that sometimes everything is thrown into making a great pilot, and then the rest of the season is crap. That happens very frequently.
Seeing as you bring that up then, first episode, there's one thing about this that stood out for me that I think is really rare, which is one thing that I remember The West Wing for. I remember watching The West Wing and thinking the first episode was really well built. The first episode did not rush through anything. It didn't have to prove anything. And I think this Black Lightning episode as well, the way they introduce everything, and we could talk about the individual elements, but has created an excellent first episode in its right. It's not excellent because it's Black America. It's not excellent because it's contemporary. Those are what makes it interesting. But it has been excellent because the introduction of information that the audience needs has been so well paced throughout the episode, with only one thing that I thought was heavy-handed, which is only one thing out of everything, whilst then still giving you a superhero film where he does fight the bad guys and do all the, the good action stuff that we want to see. And that's so rare in a TV show. I don't remember the first episode of Flash. I don't remember really the first episode of Arrow. I'm not saying they were rubbish. It's just that they didn't strike me as really excellent first episodes. Yeah. But I think I'm going to remember this one because there are various points of it where I just thought, that was just so well delivered. From this external perspective of somebody who knows he's going to be doing a podcast to review it later, I was looking for those extra things that I wouldn't have noticed if I'd just been watching it, because I would have just enjoyed it. It would have gone so smoothly and well. And I think it deserves its praise for that reason.
For me, the weakest part of the episode was the superhero stuff at the end, mostly because it felt a bit like, in kind of the pre-MCU superhero movies. I mean, it still happens in the MCU, to be fair, where you've got this, you've got 2/3 of something that's really interesting, and then you have that kind of third act, clumsily handled, big battle sequence. So, you've 2/3 of character building, whatever else, and then at the end they fight the villain and the film wraps itself up. It felt a bit like that here. Not that the superhero bit was bad. I actually really liked it. The introduction to his new costume was cool. Some of the action was cool. The way his powers works, the way he fights and uses his powers at the same time. So like hand-to-hand combat with a bit of electricity thrown in. It's, that's all good stuff. But I still thought the final sequence was one of the weakest things about it.
Weakest, maybe. I don't know if I necessarily challenge that, but there's parts of the action sequences, though, that were so interesting to me because of the choices they made. The fact that he does have this anger that gets out of control. He does decide to blow up the police car at one point, rather than just saying, I've defeated you and I'm going to move on. He just lets that frustration come right out. And when I forget the name of the young cousin, is it Will? When he's fighting Will, and there again, there's this held back anger, but then he just lets it go. You think he's going to be nice to this kid because he realizes, actually, you've been abused by your relative and you've been taught wrong. But no, he then just throws him smash into a car. And I don't actually know if that character survived that or not, because I was looking out for him and I really don't know. I mean, the fact that he's a killer, Black Lightning kills, is interesting.
I got the feeling that he did survive just from the way that they shot it, but maybe he didn't, because he was being held there. You do think in a hyper-realistic sense, if someone's getting an electricity shot through them, it'll basically just stop their heart. So as soon as he was held there, he'd be stopped. But whether he survived that or not, I'm not too sure. But I think he did, is the impression that I'm getting from my watch of it.
I guess we'll find out in the next episode. I know that Lala survives, because, he gets stabbed, but it's not a fatal stab.
He gets harpooned. What a way to go! I mean, I've got to touch on the fact that your Tobias is like a proper Bond villain. I mean, he's got the piranha tank, he's harpooning his staff. I mean, he is a proper Bond villain. The only thing he needed was a big leather chair and a white cat. That's the only thing he was missing from the Bond villain toolkit in there. 2 slightly weird henchmen, piranha pit, and a harpoon gun. He's got the funny weapon, he's got the killer animal roaming about, and he's, So, spinny leather chair and white cat for the next episode, please. I like Tobias, the Bond villain. Excellent.
Do you know, I've been saying about how down-to-earth and realistic this is, and you've just now opened my eyes to the fact that it's totally not.
It is totally a Bond villain. And this is, at the beginning, I kind of said, okay, I've got mixed things. And this is one of the mixed things where the introduction shows okay, he's a total badass and he's not to be messed with. Because the first thing is someone going, I'm sorry, as they get thrown into a piranha pit.
Yes.
And you're like, okay, well, this is the proper bad guy we're seeing now. We've seen the realistic bad guy of Lala. When you go, okay, that is street level, realistic, like you say, contemporary style villain, gang boss who is just despicable in so many ways.
And so well respected that he can name himself after a Teletubby and no one will call him on it.
Say my real name. Okay, Lala.
Many people tremble at the feet of Lala.
Lala, yeah. We're going to get the history of that name at some point, isn't there? There's going to be some sort of flashback to it. I can predict in a few episodes' time.
Maybe it was that he watched Teletubbies and thought it should be better. I'm calling it now. I've said it right here.
Which one was Lala? Was Lala the one with the handbag?
One.
The yellow one. Was that the one with the handbag?
No, Tinky Winky was the one with the handbag.
Tinky Winky was the one with the handbag, all right.
Boys can have handbags too, was the message.
Yes, yeah.
But this is not the Teletubbies podcast, so let's not get down that rabbit hole.
No, we're saving that for the 100th. So it's... so you've got your hyper-realistic villain of Lala, and then you go to Tobias, who is, like, just Bond villain-esque. And I don't know whether I like that kind of dynamic, or I don't. I'm still to convince myself, and it kind of depends on where they go from here.
I think I would have. I mean, if I was making it, why the hell would you let me do that? But if I was making the show, I would have probably left Tobias out until the second episode, at least, because I don't know. It feels a bit early to have a string pulling villain in the background, and that's something that all of the shows produced by the same people on the CW have. You have the full episode of something, and then you have the sting essentially, and he's the sting, isn't he? He's just this guy who's in the background that no one really knows about, who's doing stuff and is influential for some reason. And I don't think it's bad as such, and he's certainly memorable, and it does reference all the comic book aspects of the show as well. Because obviously that's your history, that's your legacy. Then keep it on there. It's just maybe it's something to tease in the second episode rather than the first one. Just a thought. But it's already happened, so
Yeah, so it's already happened. But I do think they could have maybe got away with showing, I don't know, the back of his head watching the TV and reaching for the phone or something like that. A subtle background way that maybe would have kept people guessing. You've already seen his name up on the billboard in the police station, so you know, I suppose, who they're looking for. They've got the Black Lightning poster up, and then next to it is the one for Tobias. So you get a casual introduction to it, but yeah, I'm interested to see where he goes, because you've got, like I say, Lala is one of these ones that it's despicable when you see him sort of disciplining his son in the shop. And the way he treats them, and the way you presume that he's been treating the cousins and the relatives, and what he tries to do to Jennifer in the bar, in the club, going, oh well, she's yours now, and by the way, we're sending her to the motel.
Yeah,
it's just one of these moves that you just think, oh my god, this character, and it's properly dark.
Yeah, and the comic book stuff is actually still there as well. So it's interesting how the two things complement each other, because you've got the Gambay character, who is the guy that makes the costumes and makes all the gadgets and stitches them up, and presumably will eventually sit at a computer screen and talk to him through a headset. That kind of stuff. Which is fine, that's again what people expect from superheroes, but the fact that the surrounding setting is so, I guess, visceral is the word I'm going to use. It adds that kind of extra dimension to it and makes it interesting.
But I'm interested into the background of that as well. He says he's known him for years. He's known he's known the family for all that time.
The clumsy,
There's
the clumsy,
Gamby.
you're like a son to me, or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, there's bits of the exposition there which are extra clunky. There's a lot of year references in this as well, and I almost wanted to write them down. I started writing down where it was like, oh, it was 9 years since I last used my powers. It was 7 years since we started, I became head at the school. It was like, and I'm thinking, why are they giving us all these sort of bookmark dates? There was a lot of that was going on, like, oh, it's been 10 years since he appeared back on the scene, since winning his... like, okay, why are all these dates coming in? But, yeah, it's, the Gamby character I'm quite interested in, because it seems like almost a character that is going to tie in other people down the line. If there's ever other heroes roaming about, this seems to be someone that's kitting them out with their outfits,
Yeah. Yeah, in terms of the setup anyway, I mean, the opening of the episode kind of tells you almost everything you need to know about what you're about to see, because he's bailing his daughter out of jail because she was doing a protest that turned violent, and then you skip immediately to him just being pulled over because he happens to be black and there was a robbery in the area, and this tells you exactly what they're going for here, exactly what kind of stories they're going to tell. And tells you a lot about Jefferson Pierce as a person as well, because he doesn't just take it, he challenges the policeman and says, oh, so the description was a black man in a suit driving a Volvo, just to kind of highlight how ridiculous it was. And I thought that was really effective.
No, I thought it properly highlighted it, and that was the scene that I was talking about earlier on, when I was saying hyper-realistic, brutally honest about the world that we are living in now, and awkward to watch, going, this actually happens. This isn't them over-dramatising something here. This isn't them going over the top. This actually happens. And you're going, it's just... I thought it was very well shot, with it being in the rain and the thunder and him trying to hold back, getting all that. I thought that was done really well. And then the drama, the two daughters in the car, one trying to film it, the other trying to sort of fight back, him having to hold him back. Because the thing is, if they start arguing and fighting more, the police just go heavier and heavier on them every time. And it's, I thought very well done in there.
There was a speed of that got me as well. I think that's what I meant by the first episode being good, because I'd noted that down too, Craig, that everything that you need comes before that the credits roll up. I think it just comes up Black Lightning for a second, and then it goes on. But right, everything you need is there. They've managed to get it in without exposition. As Chris says, there is thunder and lightning in the background, so you know that he has that power of electricity, and the police can feel it in the air when he almost takes control of it.
Yeah,
Throughout the episode, him and his daughters both try talking before they try violence, and that is him in the first scene as well. He does try talking first. He's angry, but he doesn't go for them. He talks to them, and the daughters are going to be in it because we know it's going to be about them as much as he is. So they're in the first scene, so they're set up as well as he's set up. It's so slick. There's so much that comes in, and never is anything given as exposition, I think, all the way through until Gamby. I think, Chris, you're right at that point. When he comes in, he starts to just give you data, and you know why you're getting it, but because your brain is having that conversation with itself, we need to get through this bit. But then you realise, I think, the bit that your brain activates on and says, this is exposition for later episodes. It comes so late in the episode. They've done so much before it comes to that point without having to use any heavy-handed script. That's what I was impressed with.
I thought the scene where he was being honoured was a bit exposition-y as well. There was he's been an educator for this long, and he's done this, and his daughters have done this, and it's kind of like the bullet points of everything you need to know about the character history up to that point. In terms of his career as a principal, it kind of catches you up on what he's done for the school and for the community.
But it doesn't ever do it in a way that isn't appropriate for the scene that it's in. I mean, equally, if you think about it that way, they managed to ram in that he's got a connection with lightning by having thunder and lightning overhead, and in the opening scenes. But there's nothing that feels like somehow they must have got the Weather Channel to take their weather machines out to make it thunder at that point. That actually could have been real. That just happens to be a coincidence. Nobody had to try and force anything into the conversation that wouldn't have otherwise been there.
Yeah.
It's that the conversation that's going on is actually necessary. I like the fact that you knew that he had a relationship with the ex-wife to the extent that you got their past and their connection to the two girls without somebody saying something along the lines of, do you remember when we were married and I used to have trouble with the daughter and now you're having trouble with the daughter? That's that kind of forced.
Yes. Well, that bit was fine. It was the bit before that where the whoever it was,
the sort of speech, the senator.
Yeah. It actually reminded me of the scene in Iron Man where it was like, Tony Stark, he's a genius. He graduated from here early. It was just the kind of the info dump, and it wasn't that bad. I mean, it's not something that I'll say was bad, and it does get you the information about his career as an educator as well. I suppose how else do you do that? But after that, where he could have talked to someone influential in the community, and instead he said, "No, I've met them before," and then he prioritised speaking to his ex-wife. So that gives you an idea of. They're still on good terms, but they're still separated, and then it gives you the lingering question of what separated them, which is then answered a few scenes later.
Yeah, why would they break up? And then you kind of get it. I mean, I see what you're talking about with that speech, because it does kind of go through him. It also mentions the two daughters.
Yeah,
she's a medical student who also teaches 3 days a week at the school, and she's a scholar athlete following in her father's footsteps. There's a bit of that in there. It's not as clunkily done, and it's one of those things that you've got to accept, I think, from first episodes, that you're going to get scenes like this, because they do need to try and tick the boxes so that in the second episode they can properly roll in, rather than going, okay, we gave you a little bit of a guessing episode in the first one, now let's sort of tick through the who's who does what and who knows what. And I still think there'll be little bits of that to come, obviously, because it is still finding its feet, but at least they seem to have got it done in a neatly packaged way, especially for those opening scenes, as much as there might have been a couple of exposition-y bits later on.
I think the reason I didn't mind it so much was because at events like that is the sort of thing people would say. When you introduce somebody and when you're really trying to show off about who they are, and if they're about to give a speech and you are, as they're given that introduction, you do list their achievements. That is what our society does. It's not like they had to produce a speech that would not have been carried out under those circumstances, which is where it feels more forced
for that purpose. But
and I think that's the thing about the Gamby one. When he started talking to Gamby, that's when I started feeling like it was, as you say, they're manufactured for that purpose, because they probably wouldn't need to go over their history together and start talking so much about what they did, because they both know. Whereas if you're giving a talk in front of a school full of people, there could be visitors, there could be guests, there could be people who have known this guy but didn't realise where he came from. That is a speech that's in place. Whereas, some of the things they were talking about with him and Gamby, it was, when he says, I haven't transformed for 9 years, as if he was Jekyll and Hyde. You're thinking, well, you wouldn't say that. That's not the way it would be. That's not, the other guy knows that. He's got his calendar in his hand. He doesn't, we're not all going out and comparing watches. That was, I think that's put together. That's a bit Frankenstein. Whereas the other ones, I felt it was relevant to what was going on.
No, definitely. It tells you it's two characters talking about things that they both should already know and not have to say. And that's always going to be a bit clumsy. But it was almost necessary, because otherwise it's like, who the hell is this guy? And then they have to do something. But I wonder if I don't know. I wonder if they had just left that scene out, and then towards the end of the episode he just goes and gets a costume from this guy, and that probably tells you enough about their prior relationship. To be fair,
I had enough simply from the fact that he was the guy that pulled him off the street and stitched him together.
Yeah.
You know, you've got a back alley doctor that you can go to because the police and the hospitals wouldn't be able to tolerate you. Yeah. I already know that this guy is a confidant. They've worked together before. He recognized what black lightning was. He immediately sorted him out. That was it. That was enough. And then if they'd have introduced his Q aspect from down in the basement with all the machines, yeah, that would have done it for me.
I think even having the scene where I'm finding him on the floor and saying, "Oh, I'll help you get stitched up," and then they do the shot of him getting his email later on, picking up the email saying he did a lot of good, you know, and then having him going back later, I think would have worked.
Yeah.
Even if they needed just to add an extra bit of, oh, they're definitely in contact and he knows about him, and it's, you know, to add that extra layer, I'm not sure. But
in fact, seeing as you mentioned that email, that would have been quite powerful, because the reason he could have been sending him an email is because Jeff refuses to talk about the history, whereas Gamby wants to bring him round to see, as you say, the good things that he's done. Well, if you're not going to talk to me, then I'm going to send you an email. And it would have fitted in that way.
Yeah, because ultimately this first episode is, you know, it has to establish the reasons for him to put the costume back on, because it makes it clear that it's been 9 years. So what after 9 years would make you go back to something that you thought you were beyond and not doing anymore? And I mean, the catalytic incident is when his daughters are kidnapped. But throughout the episode, there's just little, you know, the city used to have a superhero protecting it. Now it doesn't. You know, it's kind of like he's confined his focus to other things, but hasn't realised that the problem that he was fighting against in costume, it still exists, and is possibly worse than it was back then. So there's kind of like little hints about maybe I should be kind of back out there using my powers. And I like the way it kind of gradually builds to that, because even after he saves his daughters, it's like, nope, it's not over. Because he realises that there is a bigger problem that he can't solve as a high school principal.
I think there's an angle to that as well that shows you the story was built up in such a way that it doesn't fall into the "won't somebody please think of the children" angle, which is that his daughter is 18 and stupid. You know, she gets into trouble, and one of the best things about that is that trouble has consequences. And in the real world, when those consequences come for you, you can't turn away from them. You have to deal with it, and your family gets dragged down with you. So it is the daughter that starts this off, and then because she's actually kicked over a hornet's nest, it's something that won't go away, and it gets bigger and bigger. And this would have ended up on the news if he wasn't actually Black Lightning. It would have been the point where the two parents were in the police station talking about the fact that their daughters were gone and they weren't coming back. And that whole thing builds as a realistic story that we've all seen, albeit slightly exaggerated for a city that's been taken over by a gang. But honestly, you just have to move from America down to Mexico, and you've seen what some of the gangs do there. They own the city. They own Mexico City. You know, there are, what was all those students? There was like several hundred students that just were vanished one day, and then they found their bodies, and then the parents picked up after it. So it definitely does happen. And of course, then it switches at the end because he can go full Black Lightning, and that's where the superhero stuff kicks in. But before that, it was, this was a real story caused by a real stupid teenager.
Yeah. And it's the fact is that the city is diseased. You know, there's this kind of rot that's just eating away at it, and it's maybe something that he's maybe not so much forgotten about, but sort of ignored over the past 9 years because he's removed himself from it. But it hasn't gone away. I mean, it does mention the whole when he goes to speak to Lala, and it's about I agreed with the gangs that the school was off limits. So he has this kind of little oasis in the middle of the city that, you know, gangs can't touch. But outside that, it's just chaos, and it's getting worse. And he solved the problems that existed in the school, but not outside that sphere of influence. It's quite interesting that way.
Oasis was the word I was going to use, to be honest. He's sort of built this little bit that he can control, and he goes, at least when they're in the school, I know that everything's going all right.
And then it flips that when they just walk brazenly in and kidnap.
Oh yeah,
in broad daylight in the middle of class. So yeah, it's his little bubble is starting to burst, and that's enough to kind of bring him back out of hiding.
But what I like about this is not only have you got the fact that you've got a black superhero, but you've got an established family man at the heart of it as well. Yeah. It's not a 20-something superhero. This is a father of two who's had a life, who's been out there, which I think is a nice change of dynamic for one of these programs as well. You've got other characters in the wider universe of this that have got kids, but normally they become a parent partway through the series, and it's how will they cope with this and how will they cope with that. It's never they start out as they're a parent, they've got kids, it's always the kids that are the superhero, or and the parents that are in trouble. Whereas this is a nice change of dynamic, which I quite like.
Yeah, and it's around the whole what does a superhero do after being a superhero for so long? Is it sustainable? What are the consequences of sustaining it for a long period of time? And we see the moment he decided to give up, which is he was in a bath nursing his wounds while his wife looked on worried, and then it was the look of horror on his daughter's face that I think did it for him, that made him decide to jack it in completely. I know he said before that's it, no more, but I get the impression that was a common conversation that they had, and then he would go back out there. But the kind of look of horror in his daughter's face is believable as a reason for him to try something else.
No, I definitely think that was a defining factor when you see that flashback. I watched this a couple of times, and I think that flashback is where he goes, right, that's it, that's enough.
Yeah, because you have that conversation once a week when he comes back badly beaten, and he's like, nah, I'm giving up. And then the next day he's like, I can't give up.
Well, it's the conversation that we've seen a million times before in other shows where they go back to the girlfriend goes, oh, you've got to stop doing this. And they go, yeah, totally, I'm gonna stop, that's it. And then one episode later, or halfway through that episode later, they're back out there again.
Yeah.
So it's it's good to see it being a bit different.
Yeah, and I think focusing on Jeff as the educator, the respected part of the community was really good as well, because even when he talks to Lala, there's that nuance there, isn't there? The bit where Lala clearly has values that he learned from Jeff years ago, but the way he's chosen to apply those in his life is far different than what you might expect, or what Jeff might have expected from him. But the thing is, out in the real world, it doesn't necessarily work the way that he would have been taught, and because I suppose Jeff lives a bit of a privileged life in that sense, as in his, he has a nice house, his family are not stuck for anything, he's clearly not hard up for cash, that kind of stuff. So maybe he is a bit divorced from the actual problems of the less fortunate as well.
I think there is a level of isolation there, a little bit, but you would still think he would see what was going on around him, understand, even from the conversations he has in the school, where he says most of these kids have got parents in prison, or mums in prison, or uncles in prison. So he does know what the situation is like out there. And I don't know if he thinks that I give the kids a good start here and I lead them on the right path, and Lala's maybe an example of where he's failed. He thinks he's given them a good start, he's taught them the values, and look what he's done at the end of it. It's not improved. It's, if anything, it's a character that's still not that great out there.
Yeah, and it's that complexity that makes him more interesting as well, because it is just more than a villain of the week or whatever. He is the antagonist, but you can sort of see that he's given it a go, and he's still he still believes in good manners, which made for quite a good scene where the kid walks in and he's like, "Hey, that's not how you talk to people." Shake his hand, and that was interesting, because then you start to think, maybe this guy has listened, and then a minute later he's pulled a gun on him for stepping where he's not welcome.
But he still has a form of respect for him, or for the standing that he's got in the community. He understands what standing he's got, because as soon as he speaks to I can't remember the name of the character that abducts the two daughters. Yeah. So he speaks to him and goes, "You've abducted the kids of the people around here look at him as Black Jesus." And that's the level that people think of him, because of the, you hear in that sort of opening speech that we talked about earlier on, about all the respect that he's got in the community. He's got senators bigging him up before a fundraiser. He's got all this, all this respect for what he's accomplished, and he's just went and abducted the two daughters. Yeah. So he does have a respect for him, or at least he knows that he is not to be messed with in that particular way.
Yeah. And it wasn't that Black Lightning's going to come for us as a result of this. It was that there will be consequences for what you've done here because of this person's standing in the community. They've got influence, they have contacts, etc. And you see the contacts earlier. It's like, thanks for pulling strings to get my daughter out of prison, or out of lockup anyway. I think it was as bad as prison. It was just a violent protest. But it was that, he does know who to speak to get things done in some cases at least.
I've got a question about that police inspector. Do you think that police inspector knows he's Black Lightning or not?
That's a good question.
I don't think he can, because they introduced him as the person who fought against Black Lightning. I mean, it could be a cover. Maybe that was the whole thing. He pretended to hate him so he could let him go, I suppose.
Well, you've got Tobias thinks he killed Black Lightning. Because you get that thing of, well, whoever this new person is that's taken up the mantle, you've peeved him off, you've got an adversarial relationship with him. So Tobias thinks he's been killed.
Yeah. The
police inspector does all these scenes where he says, this wasn't Black Lightning. We're not looking for Black Lightning, we're looking for someone that was on drugs and came in and done that. And blew up a police car using lightning-like powers. So I didn't know whether from that I was getting, he knows who it is, or he helped him, maybe doesn't know who he is, but I'd helped him in the past. I don't.
And there's one line that helps explain the anonymity aspect as well. The fact is, there can be someone else that takes the mantle, because they say that other cities have people with superpowers. Mm-hmm. So it's not an unknown commodity in this universe. Who those other superheroes are, we don't know yet, obviously. But the fact is, it's not unusual for someone with superpowers to come and do stuff. If he was like the only one ever, then it would be difficult to believe the fact that it's a different guy. But no, it's common enough. I think people are willing to accept the fact that there's a new Black Lightning in town.
Yeah, I just couldn't work out if he knew or not. If they were being very subtle about the fact, he does know. Or if they were just setting up, no, he doesn't, and eventually he's going to get found out, and it's going to be whether he cuffs him or he tells him to stop or something.
They could still go either way at this point.
Yeah.
I like that they've left us guessing, to be honest. I do like that.
Having a bit of guesswork. It's a TV series. You don't have to answer everything yet. Yeah. So the family unit is obviously one of the cornerstones of the show. Jeff and his two daughters, Jennifer and blanking on the other one's name. Help.
Anissa.
That's the one. So what they've got is, they live in a broken home essentially, because obviously they're divorced, and for some reason that we don't know, Jeff has the custody of the two girls, and it's interesting how Anissa has taken on the maternal role. She's the oldest daughter. There is no mother figure in the house, so she's doing it. So she's the one to chew her sister out for staying out too late in a club where she almost get killed, and kind of loosens the reins a bit in terms of that you can go to this house party that you're totally not going to until 10:15, but no later. And that Jennifer's going to push it, and she probably knows as well. But there's that. There is that maternal aspect to her, but it's also the fact that she almost resents the maternal aspect, which I suppose is quite common in TV shows or films where that kind of dynamic exists, but it's done well, I think.
I thought they built a family well from some of the little details too, actually. The one that really stuck out for me was at the school, after Will has come for the first time to threaten, and he almost pulls a gun.
Yeah.
The two daughters are in the principal's office with their father, and just as they leave, one of the daughters leaves, which defines her at her heart, by storming out after talking about her people, whereas her father has dropped back down to just taking care of his immediate family, not thinking of his community beyond that. Mm-hmm. And the other daughter says, "I love you," and gives her dad a kiss, which is perfect for the description of the daughter who secretly wants to get away with everything, but knows when to keep dad on the right side with a quick little friendly "I love you" and "yes, I'm a sweet little girl," really. And I thought that was just nicely played to the two characters, letting you know exactly who they are. One of them's a bit spoiled and trying to get away with it, and the other one has really become an activist.
Yeah, and she takes after her dad in that respect. He's clearly someone that's, rattled cages to get things done, and she's just trying to do that same thing. Although maybe she's not as smart about it as he was, you don't know what obstacles he faced to get to the point of respect he's gotten to. So it's possible that, it's possible and likely that he made a lot of stupid mistakes when he was her age, because that's what people do when they're teenagers. Or, I don't know how old it's Jennifer's supposed to be 18, or lying about being 18. No, she's definitely 18, because you have that line about legally she's an adult, but emotionally and financially she's still a child. So Anissa's got to be 21, 22, something like that.
I agree that she's that old.
Yeah. So,
I guess.
So what I'm getting at is when he was 21, 22, whatever age he's supposed to be, he probably did a few stupid things that might have landed him in the police station too. But I guess that her arc might be about getting to that point where she plays things a little bit smarter.
Learn from your father's mistakes. They did the experience, so you don't have to, kind of thing.
Yeah. And there's hints that, or more than hints, that he's learned what the right way is. He tries to calmly talk himself into the back room at the club, and then that fails, and he said, "Well, I tried the right way," and then just gets violent right afterwards, because I guess that's his only option at that stage.
Yeah, I mean, he tries to talk his way in and then goes full at him at that point. The only bit I noticed about him going to the club is the fact that he had a tracker on the daughter, or at least on the daughter's phone. That's how he found out what club. It wasn't that he tried to find out which parties were going on or look at her social media and see where she's just posted a picture or something. It was a tracker.
Well, that's quite common. I mean, kids can have their phones tracked by parents now, can't they? It's Find My iPhone, or Find My Family, or Latitude, I think the name of the app is, where you can have your friends track you and stuff like that. So that's not uncommon. It's maybe a kind of stylized upgrade on that kind of concept, but I don't know. I'm surprised that Jennifer wouldn't think to turn her phone off so that her dad wouldn't know where she is.
Yeah, know where she's been. I don't know. I think it just sort of said a little bit about the character to me, that he's had the foresight to put this in. This isn't hindsight after the abduction or anything like that. This is he's already got it there. He's already got it ready and tooled up. So
it saves you a few scenes of him finding out where she is.
Oh yeah. But I mean, like I say, you could do it the same way of him checking out Facebook and seeing that she's checked in on Facebook, saying, "Here I am," or the universe Facebook equivalent, Bookface, or whatever they've got.
Bookface.
Yeah, Bookface. Just do it the other way. No one will tell. Friendface, I think, is my favourite version of that. Friendface from the IT crowd.
Yeah.
But they maybe could have done it that way, but I think the way they've done it kind of is an interesting little clue to the character that I picked up.
Yeah, I agree. It shows how committed he is as a father. It shows that he's smart, that he's not taking things for granted. He wants to keep his family safe, and that's one thing in this show that really stuck out at me. I mean, the thing is, the Flash, the plot is so motivated by characters acting like morons. Characters who should know better, who should have learned these lessons, acting like morons. But I wouldn't say that anyone in this show acts especially stupid in a way that, a way that tears the plot apart. I mean, Jennifer behaves stupidly because she's 18 and stupid, and her behaviour is kind of rebellious and what any teenager would do. But it's not that she's compromising something that she already should know. She knows that what she's doing is dangerous, but thinks, I'll be all right. That's a common teenage thing.
Yeah, I kind of like the reasoning that they give. She's got this title. What is it they call her? Sort of the Queen of Garfield. Yeah, Garfield, because her dad's the headmaster, and she's this sort of scholar, this athlete. She's doing so well, so this is her rebelling against that image. I don't want to be known as the goody two shoes, the person that does this. So I'm going to go out and I'm going to go to this party when I shouldn't. I'm going to go to this club that everyone knows is full of gang members, and
it's called the 100 Club. It kind of tells you everything you need.
Yeah, it's like the police are doing a great job of keeping the gangs under control when there's a club named after the gang. Yeah, but it's I get the reasoning behind her going. I don't understand how he didn't notice that she wasn't in the room when he gave his speech and he got the kids to say their brainwashing phrase in front of everyone. But I get why she was there, and I also get why her sister let her go as well. Yeah. She lied. She said it was, I'm going to a house party or whatever, and you're like, okay, well, she would let her go to a house party. She's not watching the speech either. She's disappeared off out the room. So it's fine,
I also like that he can't, give his daughter a row for what she did, because he wasn't there, because Black Lightning was allegedly there.
Yeah.
That was interesting. So it's kind of like, I really want to do this, but I can't. That he can't say anything, and when he speaks to his ex-wife, and it's like, she was at the 100 Club, and he's like, was she? It's just this kind of the way he's keeping his secret identity.
Oh, really? No way.
No way. Yeah. And apparently Black Lightning was there, was he? And he was like, of course not. I was talking to this guy who would totally back up my story if you asked him.
Yeah, I went to get my suit repaired by the guy that used to keep me out when I was... Yeah, okay.
Aaron, do you think anybody acts especially dumb for the purposes of plot movement, other than, teenage rebellion dumb?
No. I'm not sure I can add anything more, I'm afraid, to what you've already said. No, I don't think they do.
Yeah. And it's quite refreshing. I mean, obviously there's still plenty of time in the season for, well, that was stupid, or, that they're clearly only saying that or doing that to get the plot moving, or, I think it's hard for any TV show to counter that consistently, but certainly if they keep up what they did here and keep it to a minimum, then that'll be really good.
There was the superhero trope of him standing on top of the motel with the police interviewing everyone down below and none of the police looking up. That was one bit where I was like, was Black Lightning here? Oh, we've got no idea. Who's that on the roof with the light up suit? It's like, oh, it's him. All right, okay.
I'm not sure what I think of the costume, actually. It'll need to grow on me, I think.
The costume is the only bit I would say that is almost taken from the other universe. It is the kind of costume that you would expect to see on Flash or Arrow or something like that. A big light-up neon costume is something I would expect from the other universe, and maybe not quite this one. I do think it sort of ticks all the superhero boxes, but I don't know. I was expecting maybe some sort of, not Dark Knight-style armour, but something along those lines.
I'm surprised they went the route they did with it, actually, because I still think this compares to the Marvel TV shows. And And in those, usually when a character stumbles across their suit taken from the 70s or 60s comic book, they have a reason to be dismissive of it or make a joke of it or go, good God, who would ever wear something so horrible as that? And when the guy says, I've had a great idea for a new suit, I was expecting the very next thing for Jeff to say was, you have got to be kidding, I'm not going out in a neon sign. And he doesn't. So they didn't do this obvious joke that I probably wouldn't have minded, because I sort of wanted him to reject it for that same reason that Luke Cage rejected his crazy yellow gold band suit, which wouldn't have worked in the modern age. But no, he doesn't. He puts on the neon sign and then goes to a hotel with more neon signs. So I thought, oh, right. He is actually sort of blending in with this a den of prostitutes, so maybe that was the choice. I mean, maybe the police did look up and they thought, oh look, there's a new neon sign the owner's put up. That's nice.
It was camouflage. It was smart camouflage. Yeah. I like that. That's good. I mean, you've got the sort of recurring thing through the whole episode, which is, oh, nice suit through the whole thing.
Yeah, and it's people always referring to his
nice suit.
His work. Well, he has two work suits, I suppose. The suit he wears to his day job. That works. But yeah, I don't know. I think the costume will grow on me. I mean, it is a good reference to a good update to the Black Lightning comic book costume, as I understand it. I don't know that much about this character, so this show stumps even me. I think I only really know him from when he's turned up. And funnily enough, the thing that we maybe don't want this to do, crossovers, so I think he appears in Young Justice for an episode or two, which is a cartoon, for those that don't know. But other than that, I don't know that much about him, but you're doing a superhero show in the CW, they got to wear a costume, and he's wearing a costume. But I wonder if he's really leaning into the Black Lightning as a symbol type thing, which is a bit Dark Knight or a bit Batman Begins, and but the symbol idea being easily recognisable, and also it stops bullets, which that's got to appeal to someone who might otherwise protest wearing it.
Well, he still seems to be cut to an extent when he goes in the shower after the scene, or is that from earlier?
That's earlier. That's before he puts on the new great idea suit.
Ah, right, okay.
No, there is the shower scene afterwards.
But he's already got that wound, hasn't he? Because that was the wound he got earlier. It just hasn't magically healed, because it wouldn't.
Mm. Well, the thing is, even if, he is still getting shot at point blank range with guns, right? So it doesn't matter how strong your body armour is, that's still going to bruise.
But can it stop a harpoon? There's only one way to find out.
Yeah. Well, if someone just shoots him in the face, he'll be alright. They'll be alright, because his face isn't protected.
No, that's part of the physics of the universe. You never get shot in the face as a hero.
Although you see him like he's holding his arm up, covering his face as much as possible.
No, that's just for show. You never get shot in the face as a superhero. It's part of the physics.
Yeah. Well,
if they're really taking advantage of this, all superheroes would lead with their face everywhere they went, because it would just make them immortal.
You always aim for their shield. You always shoot their shield. Don't shoot their feet, their arms, or their head. Aim for the shield.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, the suit is what it is. The storytelling is top notch. I think they tell their plot well. By the end of the episode, he is Black Lightning again, and then I guess the next episode will be about him balancing the two sides of that again, or finding a way to balance that, because he still has to keep up the facade. Well, it's not a facade, but he still has to do good work as a principal while being Black Lightning. So is it going to be he's tired all the time because he works all day and then is fighting crime all night? Because it could be the first of these Arrowverse shows where you actually see them go to work consistently, and that's part of who they are. That would be interesting.
Actually turning up at work, that never happened.
Well, he has to be there. Principals, they work long hours Monday to Friday, don't they? So.
Hey, I'm going to a meeting. I'm just going to disappear up for a bit. You cover me. I think that's going to be the interesting conflict in this shows that he's not going to be able just to run off like you see in these other programs. Family life is going to be there. I hope they don't go along the obvious pressure point route with the family, but we'll see. It depends. I think they'll handle it cleverly if they do.
His
hopefully.
daughter's kidnapped every episode.
Yeah, every episode is a daughter being kidnapped or something being held against the school. I do think a bit of his empire is going to be pulled down as part of this. He's someone that has built himself within the community, and I think that chunks of that will get taken away, or he's going to have to sacrifice some of it to... He's going to choose, the choice is going to be put before him. You can either be this pillar of the community or you can be Black Lightning. You can't be both.
Yeah, and you'll have this episode where his secret almost gets out but doesn't quite. I don't know. I'm hoping they don't go that formulaic with it, but
they haven't with the opening episode. So you'd like to think they're going to sort of turn against. Exactly what Aaron said about the costume thing. They've not done the obvious gag with the costume, going, "Oh Christ, I'm not wearing that." No.
Yeah.
They've not done the. It's not until 2 episodes time where he goes, "Oh, and by the way, I've been working on this," and the next time he goes out, he's got the costume. It's or I've always been keeping this in the cupboard waiting for you because I knew you would come back.
Yeah.
It's one of these bits. We'll just see how it develops. It's very hard to judge on a first episode. They obviously have put a lot of work into this.
Well, they could have thrown everything into the first episode and have nothing left for the remaining episodes. That has happened before.
They could build a fantastic looking world and then pull out all the pins that we've talked about that have made it different. Go down. I don't think they're going to suddenly flip and go down a comedic route. You don't want Tobias to be a pantomime villain by the end of it.
Yeah.
You don't want them to go down all the obvious paths that they can. You're wanting them to take that slightly different route. And they've built a good universe around them so far, a good little world around them. So if they don't spoil it, they've got a good thing here. It's just, I don't know, how many episodes has this got? Has this
13.
got a full run?
13. So, it's a full run in the sense of, you give it a half season to see how it does. Whether it'll continue to be 13 episodes. And to be honest, I think the 13 episode thing is a bit better for these types of shows anyway. I mean, how often did we chat about last season in Flash, where it's like, it's another week where they talk about having to save Iris from dying, but don't actually do it. It grates after a while. Although, as we've said about the Netflix shows, 13 might be too many, at least for them. But for this, it's a weekly... It's an episodic, semi-serialised, presumably TV show. So I think the 13-episode thing works better. Whereas with the Netflix shows, they're trying to tell a complete story, but then they just languish a bit in the middle, as a rule, it seems.
Well, you get the obvious holding pattern episodes of we're achieving absolutely nothing by being here this week. You can skip 2 weeks ahead and we will be in the exact same position, having accomplished nothing.
Yeah.
The self-doubt episodes in the middle. I shouldn't be involved, I shouldn't be doing this, I don't know what I'm going to do, I'm going to contemplate life and everything. And then 2 episodes' time, they're back on again. But it's a very strong start, in my opinion. I think it's well acted. I think it was all very good performances, especially in this episode. It's hard to judge whether we'll either look back at this and go, what a promising start, and then look what happened, or we'll go, and it continued at a great pace and got even better. Looking through, I hope it's the latter.
Yeah. Well, we'll likely revisit this in the finale, and after the finale, and see what happens, see how we saw it going down, and what we continue to think about it. Except from Aaron's propensity to just abandon shows at certain points, you could get 3 episodes in and decide not to watch it anymore.
Well, Aaron does the correct thing. I do the wrong thing, which is I continue watching, where Aaron's quite happy to lop these programmes away. I add too much to my plate. It was like polar opposites.
We've only got a certain amount of time here, and there are infinite shows to watch, so I don't feel like I need to do my duty and watch them. Totally the other way around.
I've always said that I'll continue to watch all Arrowverse shows as well, because I'm enjoying at least one of them. And this one will be included in that because even though it's not the same universe, it's, the same people and all that stuff. And plus it's superhero stuff, so I love superheroes, so I'm loath to abandon a superhero show, even though I have done in the past. So we'll see how it goes. I think coming back for the finale would certainly be interesting, and to talk about that, to see what we thought about that, if you guys are willing, of course.
Date to be confirmed.
It's sometime in April.
If I haven't dropped it because it's gotten worse.
This could be the time travel podcast, couldn't it? It was where we're talking about, we're going to do that final Black Lightning podcast at some point in the future. It's coming. It's definitely coming.
I'll do it as a monologue. That will never happen. Don't worry about
Well, you've got to have two microphones. You've got to pan one left, pan the other one right, and then you can talk to yourself properly.
Yeah, that's what people want to hear. That's exactly what people want to hear. Yeah, plenty.
We'll just keep those 100th episode podcast ideas rolling.
Yeah. There's plenty of superhero shows out there, 5 of which are on the same network, made by the same people. So that's interesting. So, and this is one that definitely stands out, I think. I wouldn't say it's as different as left field as something like Legion, but it is definitely different enough. Is that something it's something you guys agree with clearly based on our conversation,
Yeah, I do think it's different from the other universe that they've built. It's not like Legion to the point where it's keeping you guessing in a completely random way, where it seems like there's a roulette wheel spinning at the end of every episode and you're going, oh my god, what the hell did I just watch? But it is different. I'm interested to see where they go with it, which is my catchphrase for all these things. But it's got a promising start. I don't know where they're going to go with it. There's obvious lines and there's unobvious ones, and I hope they take the sort of route less travelled with it.
Yeah, and it differs from Legion that it doesn't have any dance routines. Although there is the jogging scene, which is a bit kind of bizarre.
Well, it was the jogging scene was one of those ones that's like bookmark going, family man, family life, they hang out together, look how it's going. And I don't know, was it necessary? Maybe, I suppose so. It's kind of, it's not a stating the obvious scene, it's saying that they're a family and they're together and they do things together without highlighting it so much, without putting a big ring round it, or I don't know. It's a good element to bring in it. He is a family guy. It is a functioning family, realistic style family.
Yeah.
It's not completely broken and obliterated and him depressed. I think it would be a different show if Lynn had the daughters and he didn't. Mm-hmm. I think it would be tonally different. I think it's good to give him the set of the family. So, yeah.
Kind of as one of our final things before we wrap up, what did you think of the tease of his daughter having powers like his? And I thought it was maybe a bit soon for that, but I don't know what they're planning to do with it. That's the thing. But maybe it just feels like, all right, this didn't need to be in this episode. But also, why is there always a superhero or powered person starts learning about their powers while in a bathroom? And, it usually results in breaking a sink. They did it in the first Wolverine film. They did it in The Amazing Spider-Man. And now they're doing it here. And is there going to be a point where Jeff says, what happened to the sink?
I can't challenge the potential sink stereotypes you brought up there. But I think that, is it necessary here? Well, if this is going to be a show, as it was advertised, about him and his daughters, then actually I do want them to get to it. I don't want it to suddenly turn into that later on if that's going to be contrary to what they are setting up. But I was told through the marketing that it was going to be about him and the daughters, and therefore I don't think it does seem ahead of time.
I want it to follow almost immediately with what just happened to the sink? What did you do? And for it to be, because that's if we're talking about this,
drop it and not mention it.
If we're talking about this realistic, styly world, surely someone has heard the porcelain sink crash into the floor and the water start going everywhere, and she's going to start screaming or go, "What's happened?" It can't be that they go, "Oh, the sink fell off the wall all by itself, and we'll get a repairman in to do it, and no one was around when it happened. It's fine." I depending on what they're going to do with her getting her powers, yeah, sure, do it early, starting to get it. I don't know if I'd prefer it this way than this really slow meandering hint into finish the whole series with there being a father-daughter crime-fighting team. It's like, get it out there immediately. She's going to want to use her powers. Her dad's not going to want her to use her powers. Whether he reveals that he's got abilities at the same time as that is a completely different thing. You can imagine the conflict there'll be if she finds out, "Oh, I'm not allowed to use powers to fight crime, but you're out there." And, at what point does that all happen, and how does that conflict work? Because it's a different way of doing it, especially when it's a father that's out there in the first place. And
yeah, they have actually already released a picture of her in costume, which I stumbled across the other day. So it's got to be coming fairly soon, because in the other shows, when they give characters a costume, they usually, they usually reveal it a couple of weeks just before it happens, kind of thing.
But they've already, through exposition scene, revealed that Gambi knows the family, and the film's the family. So
yeah,
maybe he would sort the daughter out with a suit. But does she go to him independently, or does she get introduced?
It's a good question.
To the fact that he does it. I'm just interested in the way it works. Does he then influence in the background without Jeff knowing, and give her a suit against his wishes? Or I don't know. I'm just... Yeah, I'm interested.
He doesn't recognise her daughter, his daughter in a mask.
Yeah, well, you've got to keep some of the superhero stereotypes, haven't you? They've put on glasses. Oh my God, I don't recognise that person whatsoever. Where were you while our daughter was at a club?
The two daughters blatantly didn't recognise their father when he was in goggles. So again, it's the physics of the universe.
Although it's being narrated by one of them, so or at least the opening scenes were. That was the moment I saw him become Black Lightning once again.
Yeah.
That narration weirdly disappears, and it could have probably been done without, actually, now that you think about it. Unless it's got to return in every episode. And maybe the final episode of the season will be her kind of recounting the tale from the future, or the recent future, kind of,
Yeah, could be just how every show has its own little... what do you call it? Conceits.
Yeah.
So that's how they're going to open their every episode. Could be a different character each time. Could be the same daughter's perspective.
It'd be interesting if there's a different character each time. The comedy angle in me wants to go for a How I Met Your Mother style grandkids sitting on the sofa scene going, "Now kids, let me tell you about the time when your superhero grandfather..."
Yeah. Who knows?
But maybe not.
Yeah. I think we've covered this about as extensively as anyone should. So, any wrap-up statements, any sort of final thoughts?
I think I've covered pretty much everything I want to say. I am going to keep watching it. I'm a bit... I'm on the fence more than I have probably sounded on this podcast with it. I had to watch it twice to kind of pick up on bits I maybe missed the first time round. If I'm going to have to do that with every episode, then I think it will annoy me towards the end. But I think it's well acted. I like the fact it's in a contemporary setting. I like the fact it's got this kind of realistic angle, despite, sort of Bond villain-esque elements that have been in there and a few scenes, I like it. I will continue watching, or I will do an errand if it displeases me.
You won't turn it off. You watched 8 episodes of Inhumans.
You're right, I'll watch anything. God damn it. You know me so well. It's a universal constant.
This tells you everything you need to know about Chris, listeners, right? He hated Inhumans and still watched every episode and then spent like 2 hours talking about it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I started reviewing it, so I was screwed. But
I suffer for my art.
Suffer for the possibility of talking about something you don't like in a few weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there we go.
Craig tells me to watch these things, and then I have to, or I get sacked.
Yeah, I've already docked his pay once. Half, nothing. It's still nothing, but, you know, it's half of nothing.
I think that through doing this podcast, Chris has opened my eyes to various things about the show that I hadn't seen before, which I'm glad to now look at. Bond villain.
Sorry, I'm so sorry.
No, do you know, one of the interesting things about reviewing that I don't yet think I've personally got the skill to get round is the first view problem, which is you can be so carried away by the feeling of a couple of scenes that you don't see past them into something else. And it's good that we do this because this enables us to get past that problem. I think it'd be terrifying to go back and listen to some previous podcasts we've done straight after the event, and I listen to myself thinking, oh my God, past me thought such nonsense, you know. Whereas if we discuss it through like this, then it opens up all these extra things. So I'm glad to see it because I'm glad you said it because I think it is worthwhile me looking at. I'm still confident that this show is better for what I want to see than any of the other DC shows. I'm still enjoying it more, and I think I will, unless the Bond villain Neo sign dancing takes to the foreground and then it would ruin it for me. I wouldn't want to see that, but yeah, I wouldn't quite think it was the golden child that maybe I got hung up on when I first saw it.
Well, yeah, but it certainly did enough to make you watch at least another couple of episodes.
I'd still say it was a good first episode from the perspective of first episodes.
Well, it was a great first episode. A very strong and confident pilot.
I'm confident that it's really difficult to do a first episode because so many times people tell me, well, you've got to give it a few episodes before it really gets good. And my response to that is always, no, I don't. I don't have to do homework to then get into a show. It's got to get me in. So this has done.
Yeah. I think your point about the whole reviewing aspect, I mean, I review pretty much everything I watch these days. And if I'm not reviewing a show I watch, I tend to miss it for weeks and then catch up eventually. But the whole idea of, thinking about it as a piece, and obviously they put in these moments of spectacle in superhero shows so that you maybe do ignore the, hang on, this makes no sense aspect of it. And there's been a few times that I've watched an episode of Flash or Supergirl or whatever, and I've been dazzled by one particular scene, when they build up to the climactic action sequence and give me that. And it's easy to get dazzled by that. But then usually when I sit down to write about it and think about it, then the rest of the episode presents itself to me because I almost have nothing to say about an action scene as a reviewer, actually, because it's, well, this happened. And, I can talk about how cool it was or how they used the character's powers in different ways or whatever. But ultimately, there's more to say about a dialogue scene that expresses character motivations or where people are in conflict through talking to each other about an issue. And that's the thing that you get from reviewing, I think. I mean, I don't know if either of you have been stuck in a conversation where someone has been like, have you seen this, whatever it is, this film? And you're like, yeah, I've seen it. And they think, I thought it was amazing. And it's like, well, I thought I had this problem and this problem. And, I feel like I'm going straight to the negative, but at the same time, I think I'm looking at it differently than most of the people that I speak to.
Well, the thing is that if you like something, you can still pick it apart as well. That's the thing. I mean, as many of these sort of TV podcasts that we've done, even episodes that we've liked or TV programs we've enjoyed the entire season, you will still pick through and go, and you will always find the thing that you go, it was great, I loved it, but did you see when, and this didn't make any sense, and this person, if that happened in the real world, they would die, and surely they would have spotted that, and if they just picked up the phone and called this person, or if they did, you can start pulling at pins at everything, and then you won't enjoy it. You've got to try and give a little bit of leeway. And so often on these podcasts, I'm the exact same as you, but I'll come in and I'll go, oh, it was great, but if they had just done this, or they had just done that. And when you're watching it without the sort of reviewer head on, you're going, yeah, I enjoyed it, I watched it, and I thought it was good, and I liked this, and I liked the character, and I liked that, but the other bits of you in your head go, but what if that gets worse, or what if this goes... And especially when you're reviewing the beginning of something, yeah. You're not looking back at this with the benefit of hindsight and going, well, it started good, and then this happened. You're looking at it now going, well, let's look at the potential building block that we've put here and what can they build out that. If it had been absolutely awful, you're like, well, they've got nothing they can build from this. I've got no interest in where this is going. I've got no interest in the characters. However, what they have built is an interesting little toolbox of stuff. Lots of good little Lego bricks or whatever that they can build an interesting shape out of, or it'll all just tumble in on itself midway through, which we hope it doesn't. Yeah. So, I don't know. I'm going a long way around about saying that on these podcasts, sometimes we get stuff wrong and sometimes we get stuff right, and hopefully I haven't spoiled this for you.
No. I'm still dropping Flash, and I'm still watching this. So.
Oh no! Don't do that. All right, okay.
Oh no! Don't drop Flash. It has so much to give. Yeah. The latest episode was actually not bad.
I've not watched the latest episode at the time of recording, so I've got no idea what potential has happened out of the courtroom drama program the courtroom procedural that we now know as the Flash. So we'll see.
To be fair to Flash, from my perspective, it lasted a long time. I've watched all the way till season 4. Most series have dropped a lot earlier than that.
That's true. You stuck with it until now, apparently. All it took was Black Lightning to come and push it aside. But yeah.
All right.
Cool. So, I don't have anything else. Either of you have anything else to say other than let's keep watching this and maybe revisit it in April? I think it's when it ends.
I'm up for that.
Yeah. And Aaron, if you're still watching it, I'm guessing you might be interested in appearing for a discussion.
Well, that's the critical thing, isn't it? Am I still watching it?
Well, stay tuned, listeners.
Even if you stop, Aaron, I want you to come on the podcast and at the beginning explain where you stopped and why.
Okay.
How about that?
I'll do that.
I'd be interested to do that, because if we've both lasted and enjoyed it, or even if we've lasted and not quite enjoyed it, I would still like to hear where you stopped and why.
All right. Yeah, that could be a thing.
Here we go. Yeah, that's something. So you'll either hear an Aaron who's listened to, well, I've listened to them as well, watched all 13 episodes and got something out of them, or stopped at episode... All right, I'm going to make a prediction. If he's going to stop anywhere, it'll be episode 4. That's my prediction.
Are we taking a pull on this, are we? I feel very
why not?
about that.
Yeah, we'll see who's right.
When's the mid-season break? Is there a mid-season break on this? There won't be one. It'll just run all the way to the end. Oh, episode... What have you gone for? You've gone for 4. I'll go for 6. There you go.
Ooh. Almost the halfway point.
I think it'll get to the halfway point, and if there's a disappointing sort of what would be mid-season, I'll stop.
And Aaron, how far do you think you would get before stopping, if you were going to stop?
It would I don't know. It would have to be something about the plot. It'll be the point where it becomes as comic book as the other DC shows. And I do hasten to add that I don't mean that as a pejorative. I do mean that. Okay, now let's just embrace who I am. When it starts to become fun instead of gritty, that's when I'm going to hate it. Let's just embrace that evil persona right now, okay? Because it just makes it much better.
as soon as Gamby drops a witty one-liner, that's it. The off button's going to be pushed and the series record deleted forever. That's it.
Right, yeah,
Netflix
you're absolutely
account
right.
cancelled. I'm gone. Bye.
All right.
Great. Okay. Well, we have our predictions in. Although you didn't number an episode where that might happen.
I couldn't do that. I had to just go with the emotions of the moment.
It's just a guess, Not name number an episode, and we'll see
Okay.
who's right.
16.
And feel free to add your comments to the podcast if you want to get in on our little pool, and we can give an award to the winner.
Yes, if you name the right episode that Aaron might stop at, or even correctly predict that you'll get through the rest of the season, then you will have a personalised shout out on the Black Lightning end of season special.
There we go.
Wow, all those 4 people are going to be champing at the bit to get this.
I don't know, we've offered a prize now, we might get 4.5. Someone might get partway through posting something and then think better.
You can be internet famous for 30 seconds. Not even 30 seconds. 3 seconds.
Which is a very small portion of our podcasts. But, we'll headline you at the end.
So, great. So, thanks, guys, for joining me to talk about the first episode of this brand new show. I'm excited about it. A new superhero show with good stuff going on. I'm excited. And so, thanks, Chris, for being on the first one of the year.
Thank you.
First recording of the year. We should put that caveat. You were also in the first one of the year, so that worked.
Yay!
Yeah.
Thank you for both.
And Aaron, thanks for being on the first one and the second one of the year.
And thank you for ending on such a specific note.
I'm technically correct, the best kind of correct. That was our discussion on Black Lightning's first episode, also called The Resurrection. Once again, Happy New Year to all of you, and if you enjoyed what you heard here, then please hit that subscribe button on iTunes, YouTube, or any major podcasting app. And join us on the next Kneel Before Pod.
They don't understand our trouble. I don't know him myself, but do we come from struggle? Cause I'm like no superheroes around here, bruh. I'm like, he gotta be one of us. Gotta understand the hate and the distrust. Restore the feeling, put the love in us. My partner say I'm high, I must be smoking something. I said you're right, I know the change, I know I'm feeling something. Stand up for something, or fall for anything. Lightning came with no rain. I saw a superhero last night, he was black. He said, this is for the hood, Black Lightning's back. We pray at night for the helpless, hoping you get us through breakfast. Wishing somebody come save us. Black Lightning's back, come to shock the haters.